My dad always called me a lazy parasite. According to him, I was the laziest person alive. He used to sneer that if my coffin came with a soft pillow, I'd probably sleep through my own funeral. I fell asleep everywhere. In class. At the dinner table. Once, I even nodded off while waiting to cross the street. Teachers grew concerned. One of them suggested I be taken to a hospital for testing. Dad had laughed in her face.
She's not sick, he'd said.
She's just staying up all night scrolling through her phone. After that, he confiscated every electronic device I owned. He even ripped the lock off my bedroom door so he could check on me whenever he wanted. Whenever he caught me looking tired, a slap wasn't far behind. At first, I tried explaining. Then, I tried apologizing. Eventually, I just tried surviving. I stabbed the point of a compass into my thighs whenever I felt sleepy. I pulled strands of hair from my scalp until tears filled my eyes. I dabbed peppermint oil beneath my eyelids, enduring the burning sensation that made my vision blur. Nothing worked. When the exhaustion came, it swallowed everything. It wasn't ordinary tiredness. It felt like being dragged into deep water by invisible hands. And on the day of my final exams, it finally won. Dad happened to be the proctor assigned to my classroom. I sat rigid in my chair, fingers trembling around my pen. Stay awake. Just this once. Please. I bit down on my lip hard enough to taste blood. The metallic flavor spread across my tongue. For a few precious minutes, it worked. Then darkness crept in around the edges of my vision. The questions on the exam paper blurred. My eyelids became impossibly heavy. And then, everything disappeared. The next thing I knew, a deafening crash echoed through the room. My desk flipped over violently. I hit the floor along with my chair. A sharp corner of another desk smashed into my temple. Pain exploded through my skull. Then everything went black. Tessa Varick. Dad's furious voice cut through the darkness. Do you care so little about your future that you'd sleep through a final exam? My vision flickered. The ceiling lights above me looked distant and distorted. If you're this lazy, he continued coldly, then stay on the floor and sleep forever. I wanted to answer him. I wanted to tell him something was wrong, but my body wouldn't move. I lay sprawled across my exam paper, staring through a haze of gray shadows. Dad, I think this time I'm really falling asleep. For a very long time. Tessa Varick. His voice cracked through the silent classroom again. How long are you planning to play, Dad? The sharp clicks of his leather shoes echoed across the floor as he approached. My cheek rested against the cold concrete. Something warm trickled down the side of my face. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it.
Blood.
A student nearby finally spoke up. His voice sounded nervous. Mr. Varick, I think Tessa really fainted. Dad scoffed. Fainted? Please. A rough hand grabbed the collar of my uniform. Suddenly, my body jerked upward. Dad was strong. Strong enough to lift me like I weighed nothing. My head lolled backward. My arm dragged across the floor. Skin peeled from my fingertips, leaving a painful streak behind. You sleep in class. He dragged me toward the door. You sleep during dinner. My shoes scraped uselessly against the floor. And now you're pulling this during finals? Each word dripped with disgust. You may not have any shame, but I'm the dean of students. I have a reputation to protect. The classroom remained frozen. Nobody dared move. Nobody dared speak. The only sound was my body being dragged across the tiles. A young teacher suddenly stood. Ms. Sterling. She couldn't have been much older than 25. Concern filled her face. Mr. Varick, maybe we should take her to the nurse? Don't bother. Dad didn't even slow down. She's putting on a show. He glanced back with a sneer. She was probably up until 3 in the morning hiding some secret device. But she's so pale. Ms. Sterling said quietly. Something doesn't look right. She hurried down from the podium. Dad's expression darkened. She's faking. His voice left no room for argument. I know my own daughter better than anyone. Then he shoved the classroom door open. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Focus on your exams, he barked. If I catch anyone looking around again, your papers are void. The room fell silent. No one dared look up. No one dared help. Dad dragged me all the way to an abandoned storage room at the end of the hallway. Dust coated every surface. Broken desks and discarded chairs were stacked in crooked towers. The air smelled of mildew and neglect. Without hesitation, he threw me inside. My body struck the floor. My head slammed against the wooden door with a dull crack. Then something strange happened. The pain vanished. Everything became weightless. The room shrank beneath me, and suddenly, I was floating. I drifted upward toward the ceiling, looking down in disbelief. Below me lay a girl in a rumpled school uniform. Her skin was ghostly white. Her eyes were closed. Blood stained the side of her face. It took me several seconds to realize that girl was me. Dad crouched beside my body. His fingers dug into my chin. "Tessa." His voice was sharp. "Open your eyes right now." No response. The girl on the floor remained perfectly still. A frustrated laugh escaped him. Then his gaze landed on the blood trailing from my temple. The crimson line had reached my neck. Instead of concern, annoyance flashed across his face. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tissue. "You even brought red ink?" He shook his head. "That's commitment." The tissue scraped harshly against the wound. The rough paper tore the skin further. Fresh blood smeared across my neck. I screamed, or at least I tried to. No sound came out. Disgusting. Dad threw the blood-soaked tissue onto my face. "You're exactly like your useless mother." His eyes were filled with contempt, always resorting to pathetic tricks. He stood, brushed dust from his sleeves, then headed for the door. "Fine." His hand rested on the handle. "Stay here." The lock clicked. "Let's see how long you can keep this act up." The door shut behind him. I floated helplessly near the ceiling. "Dad!" I screamed. "That's not ink." Tears streamed down my face. "That's my blood." My voice echoed through the empty room. "Dad, my head hurts. Please help me." But he never looked back, never paused, never heard me. All I saw was his retreating figure disappearing down the hallway. A few moments later, hurried footsteps approached. Ms. Sterling. She carried a stack of scratch paper against her chest, clearly using it as an excuse to pass by. She stopped outside the storage room. Through the small glass window, she peered inside. "Tessa?" She tapped lightly on the door. "Can you hear me?" No answer. Her concern deepened. Then she saw the blood. A fresh crimson drop slid from my earlobe and landed on the white collar of my uniform. Ms. Sterling's face drained of color. Immediately, she reached for the handle. But before she could open it, "Ms. Sterling." Dad's voice thundered from down the hallway. She jumped. Her hand flew away from the knob. "Mr. Varick." She swallowed nervously. "I just don't think Tessa looks okay." "She's fine." Dad strode over and positioned himself between her and the door. "Leave her alone." His eyes hardened. The only cure for laziness is hunger. Then he glanced at the storage room. Cold. Dismissive. As though his daughter wasn't lying unconscious inside. Let her stay there for a while. Dad pulled the heavy ring of keys from his belt and searched through them until he found the brass key. "Arthur, please," Miss Sterling said, following him down the hall. "It's freezing outside. There's no heater in that room." The metal lock clicked shut. Dad didn't even hesitate. Once she's cold enough, she'll suddenly find the energy to wake up and finish her work. Miss Sterling stared at him in disbelief. Before she could argue further, the bell rang. The end of exam bell shattered the silence. Almost instantly, the building erupted with noise. Classroom doors opened, and students flooded the hallways, comparing answers and laughing with relief now that finals were over. My soul drifted aimlessly outside the storage room. I watched as Dad stood near the administration office, straightening his tie as though nothing unusual had happened. A moment later, my younger brother Tyler jogged over carrying a steaming cup of coffee. "You look tired, Dad." His smile was bright and flawless. "Have something warm." Dad accepted the coffee, and some of the irritation seemed to leave his face. "At least you're responsible." He took a sip. "Did you finish that last math problem?" Tyler nodded confidently. "I checked it twice. I'm pretty sure I got full marks." He leaned comfortably against Dad's shoulder. The perfect son. The son Dad always wanted. "Good." Dad's expression softened. Unlike that failure inside. She started playing dead the second the exam began. His eyes drifted toward the storage room. Tyler followed his gaze. For only a split second, a flash of satisfaction crossed his face. Then it disappeared behind a mask of concern. "Don't be too hard on her, Dad." His voice sounded sympathetic. "Tessa probably just didn't sleep well." Dad snorted. "Didn't sleep well?" Tyler sighed. "I've caught her reading on her phone under the covers lots of times." The lie landed perfectly. Dad's face darkened immediately. I knew it. His grip tightened around the coffee cup. Those dark circles weren't from studying. The cup slammed onto a nearby desk. Coffee splashed over the surface. I took her lock away, and she's still sneaking around? His voice rose. Unbelievable. Standing beside them, I felt a familiar ache spread through me. I remembered the night he removed the lock. He'd come home furious after being passed over for a promotion. His anger needed somewhere to go. And I'd been there. I had been sitting at my desk, struggling to finish homework while fighting off another wave of exhaustion. The bedroom door burst open. He saw my drooping eyelids and immediately exploded. Without a word, he fetched his toolbox. I sat there crying while he removed the lock piece by piece. Metal screws rattled onto the floor. You don't deserve privacy anymore. His voice had been ice cold. Let's see how lazy you are with the door wide open. I remembered staring silently at my thighs after he left. Tiny puncture wounds covered the skin. Hundreds of little red marks. Some were healing. Others still bled. I had stabbed myself repeatedly with a compass whenever I felt sleepy. Anything to stay awake. Anything to prove I was trying. To hide the metallic scent of blood, I'd begun coating myself in peppermint oil. But when Dad smelled it, he'd reached his own conclusion. Trying to hide something? The slap had come so fast I barely saw it. My ears rang for hours afterward. Then he confiscated my phone. Without an alarm clock, waking up became even harder. So I stabbed deeper, pushed harder, endured more pain. Anything to stay awake. Even now, floating outside my own body, I couldn't bring myself to hate him completely. I knew he was exhausted. I knew raising 2 children alone hadn't been easy. Part of me still wanted his approval. Still wanted him to believe me. I just wished I'd been given the chance to prove I wasn't lazy. The afternoon dragged on. Eventually, the school's closing announcement echoed through the building. Students disappeared. Teachers went home. The hallways became silent. The storage room grew colder. Much colder. The body lying inside slowly stiffened. Sunlight struggled through the half-board window but couldn't warm the room. I watched the shadows move. 1 hour. 2 hours. 3. The critical window for treating a brain hemorrhage had long since passed. Then a flashlight beam cut through the darkness. The elderly security guard was making his final rounds. His light swept across the storage room window. Suddenly it stopped. The beam illuminated my hand.
Pale.
Motionless. Still clutching the torn remains of my exam permit. The guard frowned. Hello. He stepped closer. Is there a student in there? He knocked on the glass. No response. Concern immediately crossed his face. He grabbed his radio. Front desk? I've got a student in the 3rd floor storage room. Static crackled. They're not moving. Hope surged through me.
Please.
Please open the door.
Help me.
The radio crackled again. Then Dad's voice came through.
Cold.
Authoritative. The girl in that room is serving detention. The guard hesitated. Mr. Varick, she looks like she's in a strange position. A pause. Maybe I should check on her. I said leave her. Dad's tone hardened. No one opens that door today.
But
she needs time to reflect on her behavior. Silence. Then Dad added dismissively. A little hunger won't kill her. The guard sighed. Whatever you say, boss. The flashlight switched off, and he walked away. My last chance disappeared with him. Across the street, the local diner buzzed with conversation. Final exams were over. Students and families filled the booths. Dad had decided Tyler deserved a reward. Their table overflowed with food. Ribs glazed in barbecue sauce. Golden fried shrimp. Loaded fries covered in melted cheese. Every one of Tyler's favorites. None of mine. Eat up. Dad peeled a shrimp and placed it onto Tyler's plate. You need to recharge after all that hard work. Thanks, Dad. Tyler grinned. Then he pushed one of the ribs toward him. You should eat too. You worked hard today. Dad chuckled. As long as you take first place in the grade rankings, it's worth it. His eyes shone with pride. When the results come out, if you're number 1, I'll buy you anything you want. Tyler pretended to think. Then his face lit up. I want to go to Disney World. Everyone else has already been. Done. Dad laughed. A rare, genuine laugh. We'll go next week. My soul stood quietly beside the booth, watching them, listening, feeling colder with every passing second. The cold no longer belonged only to the storage room. It had settled somewhere much deeper. I remembered the folded paper still tucked inside my pocket. A promise. A contract I'd written in my own handwriting. If I made it into the top 50 students in the grade, Dad would give me my bedroom lock back. I'd worked for months toward that goal. Studied through exhaustion. Fought sleep every single day. Carried that paper everywhere. Now it lay beneath my body, soaked in blood. The ink had dissolved into red smears. Dad would never read it. He would never know how hard I tried. After lunch, Dad returned to school. The faculty lounge buzzed with activity. Stacks of exam papers covered every table. Red pens scratched endlessly across pages. Dad was grading English literature exams. His pen moved quickly, one paper after another. Then he stopped. A single blank exam sat before him. At the top was a shaky name. Tessa Varick. The only thing I'd managed to write before collapsing. My name. Nothing else. Dad stared at the paper. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Not just lazy. His voice was low, defiant. The red pen bent slightly in his grip. I should have known. The department had glanced over. Everything okay, Arthur? He looked at the paper. His eyebrows rose.
Wow.
Not a single answer? Dad scoffed. It's my daughter. The words dripped with contempt. He drew a giant red X across the page. The ink slashed through my name, bled through to the other side. She's gone too far. He shoved back his chair. Napping in class is one thing. The chair legs screeched across the floor. But handing in a blank final? His eyes burned with anger. I'm ending this today. Grabbing the failed exam, he stormed out. By the time he reached the storage room, the sun was beginning to set. Long shadows stretched across the hallway. The building felt abandoned.
Silent. Cold.
Dad didn't bother unlocking the door immediately. Instead, he kicked it.
Hard.
Tessa. His voice echoed. The sun's going down. No answer. Done with your little nap yet? Silence. With a scowl, he jammed the key into the lock and threw the door open. A stale wave of mildew rushed out. Dad marched inside, gripping the failed exam like a weapon. Get up and look at this pathetic excuse for. The words died in his throat. For the first time all day, he stopped. I hadn't moved. Not even an inch. The room looked exactly as it had hours earlier. The same position. The same blood. The same unnatural stillness. The late sunlight cut through the dusty air. Tiny particles floated above my body like drifting ash. My fingers remained clenched around the torn permit. The knuckles were dark purple. The dried blood had become a rust-colored stain across the floor. Dad walked closer. What is this? He nudged my leg with his shoe. Some kind of performance? The rolled-up exam struck my shoulder.
Once. Twice.
You think fake blood is going to stop me from making you rewrite this 100 times? Nothing happened. No flinch. No movement. No breath. His voice dropped lower. More dangerous. Tessa. A vein pulsed in his neck. My patience is gone. Still silence. Get up. He reached down and grabbed my arm. The moment his hand touched my skin, he froze. The color drained from his face. My arm wasn't cool. It wasn't merely cold. It was ice. Rigid. Unnaturally stiff. His fingers trembled. Why? For the first time all day, uncertainty entered his voice. Why are you so cold? A flash of panic crossed his eyes. But stubbornness immediately crushed it. Of course you're cold. He straightened. You've been lying on concrete for hours. His lip curled. This stunt isn't going to work. Then he pointed toward the exam paper. Even if you freeze yourself half to death, you're finishing that work. At that exact moment, Ms. Sterling walked past the doorway. She glanced inside and screamed. The papers in her hands scattered across the hallway. Blood drained from her face as she stared at the dried pool beneath me. Blood. Her voice shook. Oh my God. She pointed toward the floor. Mr. Varick, there's so much blood. Dad frowned. Stop overreacting. It's red ink. It's not ink. Ms. Sterling backed away, shaking. I know the difference. She turned and ran. I'm calling the nurse. I'm calling Dr. Miller. Less than a minute later, Dr. Miller burst into the room. His lab coat flared behind him. He dropped to his knees beside my body, searching for a pulse, checking my eyes, listening for breath. The seconds stretched endlessly. Dad folded his arms. Don't encourage this nonsense. His voice was irritated. She's probably holding her breath. Dr. Miller's hands began to shake. He pulled out a penlight and examined my pupils. Then he looked up. The horror on his face made the room feel even colder. Dad reached forward. Dr. Miller slapped his hand away. Hard. An act. His voice cracked. Are you insane? The words echoed through the silent room. His eyes were red with fury. Her pupils are fixed and dilated. He pointed at my rigid limbs. Her body is already in rigor mortis. The failed exam slipped from Dad's fingers. Dr. Miller's voice trembled with disbelief and rage. You locked a child suffering from a massive brain hemorrhage inside a storage room for 4 hours. And for the first time all day, Arthur Varick looked afraid. Nobody called an ambulance. That was the first thing I noticed from wherever I was, that floating, weightless place between the ceiling and the sky. Dr. Miller shouted. Ms. Sterling pressed her hands to her mouth. Dad stood very still, and for a long time he simply stared at his own palms, as if they belonged to someone else. It was Miss Sterling who finally ran for the phone at the end of the hall. Dad didn't move to stop her. He didn't move at all.